Hey Jordan, thank you for sharing your time with us. How are you doing? How's life been?
Yeah, life is good. Got a red eye into Denver. Been enjoying all the building. And after some of my presentations, I actually had a lot of people who were interested in helping me build a new NFT protocol that is a way that will reward curators and artists and promoters that doesn't use royalties at all. So I'm deep in the NFTs still.
Wait, let's take a step back. Okay, so I do it in this different typical way. How do you explain to a 5-year-old what you do, what is near, and why are you like? What's really your hypothesis? Why are you building what you're building?
Yeah, so very briefly, I'm Jordan Gray, aka Star Paws, and I have built a lot of DAO infrastructure on NEAR with AstroDAO, which is a open source front end for being able to do DAO interactions using just a web interface, and also started Tank, which is a DAO that released open source code for doing generative NFT projects, and we've helped over 30 projects shipped and have over 4 million in revenue by helping those projects out. And I'm continuing to push the envelope with what NFTs are, and also doing a lot of like DAO consulting and UX consulting. So the things I do.
Okay, so I remember my time talking to the NEAR team. It was probably 6 months back. AstroDAO and like there were some 700, 800 DAOs that were popping up back then. Because we are at a venue where we have DAOists surrounded all around, what's really happening? Like, how is NEAR shaping up today? What has changed? And what we'll usually do is like we'll get into the mode of discussing what are the problems you're facing, what somebody from our listening team could actually come back and help you with, how do they reach out to you, and we'll get into a little bit of granularities around some abstract ideas and thoughts, right? Like, so we'll keep it very fluid. I don't know what really we are going to be discussing in a bit, but what has changed in NEAR? Like, I remember our discussions with AstroDAO back then, and as far as I remember, Astro was simply a way for everyone who was starting in the NEAR ecosystem or launching their own DAO to like come together and discuss or like to get notified. It was like one broadcast channel per se, right? Like right now you just said that your roles has also evolved. So what's really happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, so on NEAR right now, there's like a bunch of exciting initiatives. One of the places where a lot of energy is going is NEAR Social. So it's hopefully something that's not just an alternative to Twitter, but an evolution of what social media is. And part of that is taking a lot of the DAO interactions that you would do on something like Astro and embedding it directly in your social feed so that you're no longer going to a separate destination to do DAO activities, but you're doing it right next to where you're interacting with the like DeFi dApps, your AMMs, your NFT collections and everything else, like all in a single place. So that's a really cool initiative right now is the NEAR Social stuff. And then another really cool initiative is the fact that there's the NEAR Decentralized Collective, which is taking the NEAR Foundation treasury and putting a good chunk of that actually with the community. And right now, there's a lot of discussions around governance and how that body will be governed and how it will be set up so that it can evolve in the future. So if you're into like DAOs and governance, definitely hop in, get your voice heard there. There's lots of like actual feet on the ground, things happening, getting done there, and funds are being dispersed to things like the Creatives DAO now through the NEAR Decentralized Collective that's coming together. Other ways people can help out, I'm always looking for Rust developers.
Wow. So I have to like let my audience know here that today we are live with DAO Manager Jordan, and I remember back when we were talking, it was like a whiteboard diagram with some like arrows and some post-it notes. And I remember your post-it notes back then as well in terms of how you thought the DAO ecosystem should be organized. Our hypothesis back then was very simple, that you have discussions happening on Discord, it moves over to discourse, then there is voting happening on one place, then you have payouts being happening, tasks being reviewed, right? Like somebody's issuing grants, you have reputation flowing all around. There's a lot of stuff that's going out, right? Like, and everyone is a part of 2-3 communities. It becomes very tough. There's like a lot of fatigue, Discord deafness and whatnot. And by the way, Discord is like nowhere close to how you should really look at DAOs, right? Like now, I just heard you talk about governance experiments, right? And I also know that back then when you were thinking about how NEAR should be laid out, your thinking was very much aligned towards having everything interconnected, right? Like things talk to each other, it's all in one place. I distinctly remember it. I love that diagram, and I till date keep referring it to my team internally. So my question is like, what do you really think is happening as far as governance goes? Like, what are some of the top experiments? Are there experiments that you're really like excited about? What do you think people should be doing on that front? But more importantly, I would love for you to like touch a little bit upon, given everything that's cooking at NEAR today, right? Like, what really are the problem statements that's still keeping you awake? Like, what's unsolved for? Let's dive a little bit into, because one of the things which we have been trying to do at DaoLens is that we don't want people to just have subjective discussions. So subjective discussion is me saying, oh yeah, participation is low. But then tangible output there can be, how do we increase the participation, right? Like, so we would love for you to like spend the next 3-4 minutes talking about it. Two questions. First, on governance, what's your stake? What's really working out? What experiments are you excited about? And second, what are the problems that you are still like really concerned about?
Yeah, on the governance front, some of the most interesting work that's happening is with proof of personhood, or how you can make sure that you're Sybil resistant, and looking at options that could allow for more anonymous actors but still have the proof that it's an individual in place. And there's some novel things happening there, for example with Sweatcoin as like a proof of like activity, and looking at different vectors to incorporate into what actually says is a human. And I think that the research and the work that's being done there is very relevant even outside of that sphere, because when you start looking at marketing and user acquisition and engagement, being able to query somebody and their activities and how they fit into it without actually knowing who they are is a very powerful tool for marketing. So that's really exciting work that's happening, and not everything is solved. Obviously, that's a big ask. So that's something where it's underway, and I think that it's something that will be iteratively improved. I think that what's shipping right now here at ETH Denver is a good like minimum viable product that allows us to have people who have proven their identities or their personhood participating in governance and actually starting to do fund disbursements and things like that. But as it evolves, we'll be able to do even more exciting things with it. So that's a big piece right now. As far as like on the technology side, some of the things that are being chewed on is the way that the NEAR social interface is being served up is similar to this technology called Web 4, where you're actually delivering HTTP content from the blockchain.
Yeah.
And what's exciting about that is you can actually deliver your interface right from the same smart contract that does all of your financial logic and everything else. So the common attack vector of putting a UI that looks different than like what is or looks similar to the real UI, you don't have that problem anymore, because those two things are like inherently tied together. It also makes things like oracling and querying like a lot easier. It all is stored in that one place. So that's really exciting, and the modularity that NEAR Social allows for is really cool, because when we're looking at things like DAOs and how these pieces fit together and how people interact with them and participate, you want the flexibility. Like DAOs are so nascent, we don't know what they're good for. We're learning as we go. So the modular flexibility of NEAR Social, where everything is a module and it all fits together in this space, is really cool, and I think it's going to unlock a lot of interesting combinations of like software that doesn't exist today. And I think one of the hard things is explaining that concept to developers and the developer tooling around that, because it's something that's very new. So that's like one of the things that people are really like chewing on and working on right now. And then also from like the adoption perspective, like for end users, like how that should be encountered and what's going to make it click for people, where you don't have to explain it. It just makes sense and it's obvious.
Wow. So we talked about Sybil attacks for a while, right? Like, and I know you're probably aware of Gitcoin and Passport and everything that they are doing. Now, I'm going to tie it to a very different question, right? Like, I know that a lot of people in our audience may be folks who have this idea of, let's say, starting their own Sybil attack resistance related tool, or like building a solution on that front. But doing what Gitcoin has done is no easy task, right? Like Gitcoin has earned its reputation over 4 years, 5 years of hard work and whatnot. What I'm essentially coming to is we talked about some of the problem areas where people could come and like create impact. Let's say I even build a solution for it. How am I really going to distribute? Like, what would you recommend people to do? People who specifically do not have any background, or maybe like they do not have, like, let's say, enough of a presence on a platform like Twitter or whatsoever for like getting the right adoption. Because I see a lot of people having phenomenal solutions, but they're just not able to put it out in front of the market. And this is a question that by the way, I put on a panel that I hosted earlier today as well. We got some very interesting answers. Based on your experience, what would you recommend these people with these thoughts and solutions to do? And by the way, like on record, there is nothing wrong with doing or participating or going with whatever Gitcoin Passport is. By the way, I love the project, big fan of it. So this is like Gitcoin Passport is just a random example that came to my mind because you mentioned Sybil attacks, but it applies to a lot of things. It applies to like how do you get people to engage in your community? How do you get people to, for that matter, participate, right? Like governance is low. Let's say I build the best governance solution in the world. How am I going to get a community to use it? And of course, like if you can shed some light into what's happening inside NEAR as well, like who's the right person to reach out if I have built a solution for NEAR, that would be like a bonus.
Yeah, so this is more of like a business question than anything else when you're talking about adoption. And what I would say to anybody who has like a piece of software or a solution that solves an actual pain point for people is to really look at that group of people that you're solving the pain for and understand how and where you're going to connect with them. And if it feels too fuzzy where you're like, this solves a problem for everybody, that means that you haven't thought about it enough. And you need to narrow your thinking down and start shaving away the people who are not right for your targeting. And that will give you like a much better target so that you can spend your energy wisely and start to see some impact and adoption numbers that if you see it in a very small sliver like of a target market that you are getting that adoption, then you can start expanding either horizontally or vertically or however you want to expand. But to be very focused when you're just starting out with adoption so that you can see the success of it.
Wow. Okay. So that's something which not a lot of people would say, but I couldn't agree more. Like when you are hearing that a lot of people are saying yes, you're probably building the wrong thing because you're not really hearing what people are saying. And I have gone through that journey personally as well. It's like building a startup is anything but magical. So it's a lot of pain. But sure, Jordan, we talked about a lot of stuff. I'm sure people want to contribute to NEAR ecosystem. NEAR has been an ecosystem which I have closely been monitoring for quite some time now, right? Like, and I'm very bullish on ecosystems like NEAR. In fact, I always name NEAR as one of the few things people should definitely explore when they are thinking beyond the core mainstream offerings that are out there. For all the good reasons, for the type of conversations we have had. How can somebody reach out to you? Are you even the right person to reach out to? And we can take it from there.
Cool. Yeah. I'm definitely a good person to reach out to. I'm Starpaws on Twitter and all the other social networks, and that's the easiest way to find me probably. And the kinds of conversations I'm having that are, I think, the most valuable today are ones around businesses and startups. So I've been doing a lot of mentoring for DAOs that are trying to figure out like how they can have impact and how to measure these things. And I'm also really interested in talking to folks who are changing the way that NFTs work. Hopefully here at ETH Denver, we're going to have some implementations of what is now currently just a white paper. And I think what we have is going to change the way people even think about NFTs across the entire ecosystem.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on spot and ask a question, but I need to establish some context for it. So you know DaoLens from like whatever, a year back. A lot has changed, and I'll make sure that we probably grab some time on your calendar and show what we have built and what we have learned actually over the years. But we are announcing something called DAO Soda. It's Solutions Design and Awards. And it's partly inspired with these working groups and guilds that you're seeing. So Aragon is, for example, doing a hackathon where they are bringing these partners who can float around their bounties, and these bounties can be like claimed by people who are into hacking, and there are like massive rewards to be won. Then I am personally a part of this group called DAO Star, which is an elite roundtable, right? Like, and you're nodding, that means you know about DAO Star and so on. So like what we are coming up with DAO Soda is simply that we identify certain themes. Those themes are chain agnostics, and there can be very small prizes. The prizes can go all the way from like $1,000 if a partner is just interested in spending a little bit, to like all the way to whatever you want. And it's going to happen remotely, but we have identified some very cool mentors around the world to like sort of do it over the next sort of 4 or 5 month period. And a good incentive here is for people who are building and who are not technical, they can actually also go about and leverage the engineering resources that we'll give them without any hook or without any strings attached. They can use our engineering resources if you're non-technical to like take guidance. We'll talk about go-to-market, we'll talk about fundraise and whatnot. So it's an all-inclusive thing, and then it will culminate into an event. So for example, I know NearCon was a big success last year, and we have like summits happening in Paris. There's an idea of a summit happening in Paris somewhere in July for DAOs again, and we are thinking of like keeping it super focused on implementation of certain tools. So first question to you, would you be down for being a mentor?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to sign up for that. And Yash is going to make sure that we show you whatever is happening on like DaoLens side and how DAO Manager has evolved. We are actually launching something at the intersection of AI and DAOs as well, which is very cool. And I think I have to thank you here publicly because I've never done that on record for all the inputs that you gave long back, because a lot of critical thinking has gone into it. So thank you for always being very frank with your feedback. Folks, you just heard how you can reach out to Jordan. You know how to reach out to me. I'm Viksram, VIKS_RUM everywhere. And DaoLens is @DaoLens. Jordan, it was a pleasure having you here for this like sort of a candid chat. Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, just thank you for having me, and super cool to see the launch. Congratulations on the launch, and what you just described sounds like an amazing opportunity that you're offering to people. So I'd be honored to be part of it. So let's go.
We're offering to people like Jordan. Thank you. That's a wrap from us, folks.